Beetlejuice, backstage science here. So I'll take it you guys have seen the new Beetlejuice trailer, and watching it, I had some thoughts, specifically about these two scenes. The one involving the plane crashing into the ocean, and the sandworm chasing the characters. Having watched these two scenes a couple times over, now I'm starting to think they're taking a mixed approach to it. And they're choosing to try and recreate stop motion in the CGI, or well, trying to make that animation style in CGI. I imagine they're probably recording it or animating it in threes or fours instead of ones, like most CGI. If you're curious if any movie has tried changing up their animation style recently to replicate something close to this, Spider-Verse actually did it. They animated a lot of their scenes on twos so that the frame is held for 2 frames before it changes. By animating on threes or fours, it's going to have a bit more of a blocky movement to it that would very much so recreate the style of stop-motion animation. I know it was previously stated that Burton didn't want to rely on CGI animation to create all of the effects in the movie, which, as somebody who does practical effects, I'm really happy to see, because it's been more common that this side of the industry isn't used as often as they become more reliant on CGI to take over where practical effects normally stood. Now, let's jump to that sandworm scene in particular, because we saw far more of that than that plane scene in the trailer. For it, the way that they've rigged it digitally, you can almost feel or see the armature of the puppet skeleton underneath its skin, as if it were still a real puppet. I love the little details like that. Like, it moves in the chunky sort of way that a stop-motion puppet would with no motion blur. Looking back on it now, it actually reminds me more of how the puppet from the stage production moved, rather than the original stop-motion puppet from the first movie. I genuinely believe that lack of motion blur is actually going to make this entire movie easier to watch for people who have a slight sensitivity, who find themselves getting easily nauseated by movies, especially those made more recently that kind of overuse it if you're asking me. I have friends and family who are affected by this, and I'm excited to see whether or not they have the same reaction to watching Beetlejuice, and whether or not it's an easier movie for them to watch. Part of me does wonder if the scenes that are in the trailer aren't fully rendered, particularly that airplane scene. Not that it isn't like the motion blur or added effects, but I think the word I'm looking for is very flat. They seem very flat. And it's not a bad thing. Beetlejuice as a movie is very cheesy, but that's what part of makes it good. Of all the CGI effects have all that same look, if they're all like that, I think it's going to work out wonderfully, because it's going to make them look surreal or uncanny. And I think that's going to give Beetlejuice the kind of comedy horror that we all love. I won't lie. I know I got into this industry at a bad time. When I did, I started getting into doing effects and getting into this industry in 2019. And it's not being used as much anymore, but I am grateful for directors like Burton and Nolan, who are still trying to keep as much practicality in their effects as possible, and trying to use CGI sparingly. I'm hoping that if this movie succeeds, you'll see more films try and take this approach to revamp their old movies to a modern age, to keep the spirit and soul of the original movie, to take what made it unique and bring it to modern audiences, because if it's done well, people are going to love it. I am truly and honestly genuinely excited for when this movie comes out, because they're taking really good care in making the sequel. And I won't lie, I would love to see a reference to Beetlejuice musical on Broadway or on the tour. I don't need anything big, just something fun. So that's all for now. I just wanted to share my thoughts as they came to me. I know I'm a bit late in making this, but I hope you guys enjoyed, and thank you so much for listening to the ramblings of a theater technician.